beautiful day this morning at Mount Lofty, by the way.
Some rain, please, soon.
We've ordered it for next week.
Thank you, Shane.
On there now. Good morning, Paul Antonio here.
Good morning, Mayor Paul. Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate
No worries.
everyone's presence.
The Weather Bureau says that most of Eastern Australia will get good rain this coming weekend.
Just beautiful. We very much need it.
Well received by the Antonio family, I can assure you. But in saying that, weather forecasting is not an exact science. I won't get too excited.
Thank you. Yes, but what I thought was 70% chance on Saturday coming. So we've seen that before, but yes, every day is a day closer to a good soaking rainfall.
Absolutely.
If I could interrupt, I've got just a little note from Natalie Plum, who's said that she's waiting to be admitted into the meeting. Is there a front foyer where there are some people waiting?
Yes. Natalie waiting to be admitted to the meeting. Yes, microphones will be off. Is Natalie present at the meeting? Have you been admitted, Natalie?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Most people still got their microphones on.
It's not on. We're not on. We're not on.
James, Councillor O'Shea, have you arrived?
Sorry, I've just noticed, is this meeting being recorded as well?
Yes, Zoom records, of course, and therefore you can watch later if you're sent the link.
Right, okay. Just want to make sure everyone's aware of that as well. So
Yes. So at this stage, at 8:35, we have Sophie present and Natalie. We have Megan and Councillors Megan, Tim and Mayor Paul, as well as Save Mount Lofty membership Shane Egan. So if we have no messages, the knowledge of other councillors who are yet to be put into the Zoom presentation, I'd like to begin, and therefore I would once again request councillors please, and non-speaking persons please, put your microphone on mute. So once again, good morning councillors, I'm Janet, and Save Mount Lofty implores councillors to vote no to this DHA Mount Lofty residential development application. This morning you'll hear from Mark about the deficiencies of this application and the fact that the development is outside Toowoomba's priority infrastructure area. Then you'll hear from Jill about the bushfire risk and the opportunities that this site presents for Toowoomba's green infrastructure strategy. Our first speaker is Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Always unmute your microphone. I hope everyone can hear me now. Thank you for the opportunity, councillors, on behalf of the community, for this for this chance to express its views in an informal way. I gave a first presentation to council in January 2019. A lot has happened since that time. In it, I said the koalas always lose, and I think in this application, the koalas are still losing. I understand there's been a planner's advice to council. I haven't had the benefit of seeing what that might be, but I understand it recommends approval, so I'm not sure quite how the matters requested by council as information request and replied to by the developer have been dealt with. Neither is Gillian, who is our other speaker here. So I wouldn't mind seeing that at some stage. It would be very beneficial, but at this stage I proceed without that. People interested in planning decisions have always seen from councillors, we didn't have an option but to approve it. Does that sound familiar, councillors? The planning scheme allowed it. Well, I'd submit to you that there are sufficient planning grounds to reject DHA's second application. As you all know, it's got to be assessed against benchmarks and codes in the planning scheme. This zoning is, of course, a community facilities government precinct. It's a bit outdated. It is outdated because it's no longer a rifle range. And therefore, nonetheless, it's the reality of the situation. And by putting in an application for reconfiguring a lot, the applicant has avoided greater public scrutiny and any formal submission rights. So we've got an application over 12 hectares of the total of 379 hectares for a 50-lot subdivision. If the application is allowed under the planning scheme, in fact, an application for subdivision is allowed just about anywhere in the Toowoomba Regional Council area, but doesn't necessarily mean it has to be approved. Community facilities are to provide, the community facility zone is to provide community-related activities, either private or public. Its primary use is for special government uses. If the activity ceases, then the land should be redeveloped for alternative community activities. Now, I'm reading that, but I'm paraphrasing it straight out of the planning scheme. That's your planning scheme. That's what it says about the zoning. The applicant needs to get around those sorts of things by looking at the benchmarks for subdivision of lots, and they might satisfy those technical requirements. But the reality is the zoning doesn't align with that application at the moment. Then they look at something like impact. Impact's only minor. It's only 50 lots. Well, I don't think a 50-lot subdivision is minor. They then look quite inventively at need. Councillors would be aware there are 2 applications of 1,000 lots each in the North Toowoomba area, which are currently reaching the decision stage. They're not thought bubbles by developers. So that's the Habitat and the Northgate Vista developments, north of Toowoomba. They are much larger compared to a 50-lot subdivision. No quantitative need. Qualitative need is what the applicant says is needed. This is prime range land. It will attract million-dollar prices. We need more of this land. We need to get, who's going to benefit from that? Well, it's the developer that will benefit, and I'll say more about the developer shortly. There's no need for this application. It's outside the priority infrastructure area. Yes, it is. Why spend all this money, councillors, on planning for trunk infrastructure when an applicant comes along outside the area and says, can you approve it? Gillian will talk about the bushfire and ecological concerns as well as grounds for refusal of this application. But there could have been another way. This applicant could have made an application for a material change of use. The 12 hectares could have been residential development, zoning of some description, use of residential use. The balance could have been for parkland, open space parkland. Didn't do that. Chose this backdoor method of having a lot reconfiguration. The zoning on the use of the remaining land by this application is unknown. You might have some discussions which are unknown to me and to Save Mount Lufty about what's going to happen with it, but there's nothing concrete or binding that I can see in this application. But a few years down the track, the developer can come back to you and say, look, we need another development here. You know, just a few more lots. It's still zone community facilities, government precinct, and I hope you really fix that up in the new planning scheme, councillors. What are the intentions of this applicant? Well, they're supposed to find housing for defence workers and their families. There's no mention of this in this application. The 344 lot application has never been withdrawn. They could have sent you a letter saying we will withdraw the application. It's still on the books. It's referred to as the alternative application in this application. They're holding it over councils and the community's head. The plans refer to stage 1. Where's stage 2? Where's stage 3, councillors, in a year or two's time? Look, this land is of high ecological significance. It has high scenic value. It has historical significance. It needs a far more open and wide-ranging community discussion about what should happen with this land, not simply say yes, stamp approval to a 50-lot subdivision with a government organisation that should bring in the community and discuss what it could do with this land that happens to be a windfall for it after its historic use. I'm happy to answer questions. I know that's not going to happen, but I'm available if any councillors want to talk to me at any other stage. Thanks for the opportunity of expressing those thoughts.
Good morning, councillors. My name's Gillian. So council must vote no against DHA's development due to the escarpment bushfire risk. DHA's bushfire report acknowledges that the proposed development is within mapped bushfire hazard area. This risk is confirmed by the Queensland State Planning Policy Bushfire Hazards Map that we have on the screen now. If we zoom in to the Mount Lofty site, the map shows the development site is surrounded to the east by escarpment designated as very high potential intensity and high potential intensity, with steep slopes and extensive dry vegetation. This is lots 1 to 8, which lies directly next to bushfire-prone land that is very high and high potential bushfire intensity. Lots 9 to 14 lies in medium potential intensity and is covered in vegetation and borders steep high potential intensity area. The majority of the proposed 50 lots sits right in the potential impact buffer zone that is denoted in the shading potential impact buffer. DHA's bushfire report proposes conditions on the development and says there is only a tolerable risk to Toowoomba's community. Councillors should ask themselves, why are we putting the Toowoomba community under any risk from escarpment bushfires? The Bushfire Royal Commission has heard significant evidence that 99% of homes destroyed in southeast Queensland last fire season were in or within 500 metres of declared bushfire-prone land. We have developed this graphic that we've got on the screen now that shows the reach of this area, this 500-metre area, beyond DHA's proposed development and threatening the existing homes in the suburb of Mount Lofty. DHA's bushfire report fails to address that the site burned out in the October 2002 escarpment bushfires. Mount Lofty residents in the streets adjacent to the proposed development area were evacuated from their homes. This bushfire was fanned by a hot northerly wind. However, DHA and council bushfire experts have only considered potential bushfire impact from a westerly or an easterly wind. The only reason the 2002 bushfire did not reach the houses along Martini Street and Rifle Range Road was because there was this buffer zone in between. DHA now wants to build 50 houses on this buffer zone. That's 150 new residents and 1,200 existing residents, and 200 elderly residents of the 2 nursing homes on Mount Lofty that DHA is willing to put in the line of fire. So QFES and Council are in the process of Operation Cool Burn, which is managing the fuel load on the escarpment. This action is commendable and is an acknowledgement, however, of the risk of bushfire along Toowoomba's escarpment. DHA, however, has failed to take any mitigation bushfire measures to ensure its 350 hectare property is safe from the threat of bushfire. Save Mount Lofty has repeatedly requested DHA undertake fuel reduction measures, establish fire trails and clear dense lantana and privet, but DHA has done no such work. DHA proposed clearing existing native vegetation to create a 20-metre wide asset protection zone for the 50 lots. But this will provide little protection from bushfire sweeping up the escarpment. DHA argues that although the escarpment slopes are greater than 30 degrees, the rural lots are 150 metres from the escarpment boundary, which is a major bushfire hazard area. But the whole site is within 500 metres of a bushfire prone area, as heard by the Royal Commission. On the 12th of February this year, former Queensland Fire Commissioner Lee Johnson explained that the bushfires experienced by Queensland firefighters in the 2019 and 2020 bushfire season were of an intensity never before experienced. With respect to the Toowoomba escarpment, Commissioner Johnson said, if you live on the escarpment and you have extreme fire weather and there is a fire, get the hell out of there. It is clear that DHA's bushfire reports are based on old bushfire impact data, whereas the Royal Commission has told us that planners must rely on current data and future-looking data. It would be culpable for councillors to rely on such old bushfire assessments, given the most recent level of bushfire intensity in our state. Mayor Antonio, you recently pointed out the need for Toowoomba's planning scheme to take into account bushfire risk. How can Council approve this development given the significant escarpment bushfire risk that we have outlined this morning? Surely the prudent step must be to pause all development applications until the Toowoomba planning scheme has reformed to take into account the Bushfire Royal Commission's recommendations. I will now move on to Council's Green Infrastructure Strategy. This was developed in 2018 and includes the following objectives: to protect the Toowoomba region's natural assets and ecosystems, and to connect bushland areas with biodiversity and habitat corridors. You have said this strategy positions the Toowoomba region as a leader in green infrastructure planning and delivery, and that preserving, enhancing and expanding our green infrastructure networks will be at the core of every decision Council makes. Save Mount Lofty implores you to vote no against DHA's proposed development. This no vote will give Council the opportunity to secure this site for the establishment of a Mount Lofty native parkland. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Council to fulfil the aims of Toowoomba's green infrastructure strategy. Councillors, you have a real chance here to preserve the last remaining native bushland on the Toowoomba escarpment. If we have learnt nothing or anything from the devastating Victorian and New South Wales bushfires, it is that the bushfire will show no mercy to Toowoomba's residents or their homes. And we need to act preemptively by maintaining a buffer zone and protecting what is left of our native escarpment bushland and wildlife to maintain the legacy of our garden city.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Mark. Councillors, that concludes the Save Mount Lofty Zoom presentation this morning, and thank you for listening to those community concerns and for taking them into account, for considering closely all this evidence when you're making your individual decisions for Wednesday. When the hot northerly wind blows again, and when we see smoke on the horizon here on the range, Mount Lofty residents will all remember you. Thank you.